r/AskReddit by Reddit and chill. Redditors whose life was changed by a DNA test. What happened? My life wasn't changed. But I was contacted by someone on 23andMe wondering how we were connected since he thought he knew all his second cousins in the area. I recognized the surname as that of my biological grandfather. I answered this man's question by detailing how my grandfather had gotten my grandmother pregnant out of wedlock. Then it turned out he was already married with a family, forcing my father to be put up for adoption. I guess the guy didn't like that story and blocked me. What an ass. Your response is pretty much the only way his question could be answered. If he knew all of his other cousins, what else could he expect you to say? My friend did a test to see what her ancestry is recently. She ended up discovering who her dad actually is and learning that her dad is still alive. Not dead like her mother said. So that's something. Whack. I had a very rare cancer as a child. I was always worried that any children I might have would suffer the same fate. When my wife and I got serious about parenthood, I learned that there was a genetic test for the type of cancer I had. I submitted a sample and it came back completely negative for any cancer markers, meaning my kids would have essentially no chance of developing the same disease. This was a huge relief. But at the same time it meant that my cancer was completely spontaneous, which changed an incredibly rare cancer into an almost impossible cancer. This profoundly illustrated just how little control we humans have over our fate. My mother and brother both passed away from extremely aggressive brain tumors. The doctor assured us that there was no genetic link and said the best assurance I could offer you is to give you all an MRI. But that only helps you right now. I know quite a few people so worried about cancer. They change so many things in their lives to try to avoid it. My attitude now is that if it happens, it happens. There's no rhyme or reason to cancer. Except for smoking. For so many reasons, please don't do that to yourselves. My family has been just my mom and I, and our dogs, for a while now. I took one and pretty much got exactly what I expected. My mom took hers and it came back that she wasn't Jewish at all. This was extremely confusing because her father and his family escaped the Nazis. Her father was definitely Jewish. She immediately knew he wasn't her father. It was horrible at first. My mom was devastated. As I'm sure you can imagine. She lost part of her identity. She looked at the part that connects you to people in your family and found someone listed under close relative whom she had never heard of. This person was listed as first cousin for me too. My mom's parents hadn't spoken to her in decades. So there was no asking them. She reached out to the close relative and found out that his parents lived next door to my mom's parents before my mom turned 1. My mom remembered a rumor that one of her cousins told her when she was little. Her mom had an affair with the next door neighbor. Turns out, the next door neighbor was my mom's real father. He has 3 kids around my mom's age, one is 3 months younger than her, and 3 kids about 30 years younger. As you can see, he got around lol. He passed away a few years back. But the family welcomed us with open arms. When we met them, it was an instant connection. Like we had been a part of their lives forever. They brought out pictures. And boy does my mom look like her father. They told me that my grandpa would be so proud of me and my accomplishments. Some of our interests and talents aligned. They told us we looked like the rest of the family. And we did. We never had that before. Funerals too. One of my uncles passed away. But I got a chance to meet him before he did. I think he was waiting to meet my mom and me. He was an amazing person, and even though I didn't know him for long, I loved him. My family has turned this into the best experience of my life. And my mom's too. Edit. Spacing. This one is really nice. I'm happy for you guys. Apparently I have no Native American like I was told growing up. I'm 98% British Irish. And there's 0.1% of Ashkenazi Jew. The biggest life change came from the realization that I had extra Neanderthal DNA. Which gives me the superhuman ability to sneeze less after eating dark chocolate. Edit. I can't believe this sparked so much discussion. I revisited my 23andMe to see how my Neanderthal DNA ranks compared to some others. I have 280 variants. Which is more than 58% of other folks. So does anyone out there with more variants really have less back hair? People sneeze after eating dark chocolate? I was adopted at birth back in the 1960s. I had a happy childhood, but both of my adoptive parents died of cancer in the early 1990s. I sent my DNA into Ancestry in the hope that I'd make contact with one or both of my birth parents. Literally all I had was my mother's name on the birth certificate and my father's name on a photocopied set of adoption paperwork. When I first checked the result, I was disappointed to find only a few third and fourth cousins. I emailed the ones who looked as if they visited the site regularly. It turned out they were all related to my birth father. He had also died sometime in the early 1990s. Then one day I logged back onto the site and found that I'd matched with a first cousin. I sent a tentative email saying that I'd been given up as a baby and appreciated that it was a sensitive family matter and that if he didn't want to get involved I was fine with that. But could he give me some more information about my family? He replied the next day and told me he was my uncle and that my mother was still alive. She had given birth to me as a teenager, but had reluctantly had to give me up as her family was religious and birth dad was a deadbeat. He sent her a card saying sorry and a £20 note when he heard she'd had me, then married someone else. I made contact with her by email earlier this year. It turns out I have a half brother and sister, as well as nieces and nephews. We are taking things slowly at the moment, but after so many years it's amazing to have a mother again. We have the same likes, dislikes and politics. I'm hoping to meet up with her next year. I'm glad things have worked out well for you and your family. My mother passed away a few weeks ago and I found adoption papers hidden away in her stuff. So I have a half brother out there somewhere that I never knew about. I don't know whether to try and reach out to him or not. Like you said, it's a sensitive matter. My entire life I was told I was heavily Native American. So much so in fact, my granddad was a Cherokee chief and he gave all of his grandkids Native American names. I have 0% Native American and I'm mostly Irish and Scandinavian. Quite a few whites falsely claimed native heritage back in the mid-19th century in order to steal land and money set aside for Native Americans. I suspect this is what's behind cases like yours, where there might be a paper trail but no actual native DNA. I had been searching for my biological father for 10 years. When I took my DNA test and got the results back, I found out A. My bio father was 14 when I was born. B. My mom was 20 when I was born. C. My father died when he was 24. D. He was murdered by his best friend. E. That there was a Lifetime original TV series with an episode dedicated to his murder. F. That I had a half brother. G. My half brother didn't know the person he called dad his whole life wasn't his dad. Q. Existential crisis. Good lord. My mom recently found her birth mom from doing a DNA test. So now we know a little bit about our medical history. We have an entire family that we don't know obviously. And my mom knows why she was given up for adoption as a baby. Edit. Also, just to add a random tidbit, I said that now we know medical history because both my parents were adopted. My dad has met his birth mom. But we, my dad and siblings and I, are not super close, so I don't think we ever found out or asked about his history with his mom and why she gave him up, etc. We met her once, but I don't know if he's kept in contact with her and I haven't heard about her in years. Not sure how he found her though. Not sure if it was because of a DNA test or not. Willing to share why? The child wasn't mine. Got divorced. Became depressed. Drug addiction. Rehabilitation, and now I'm building on a new sober life. If you could do it all over from the DNA test on, would you change anything? Not quite life changing, but I've never known my father. He spilt from my mother before I was born and I never saw him. All my life my mother and family said he was I'm mixed race. Recently I took a DNA test and the result said I am 0% Thai. But what did the test say then? My dad and his two siblings found out they all have different fathers. One other brother has already passed, so we'll never know if there was a fourth baby daddy or not. My dad is a junior and named his son the third after a man who it turns out is no relation. Our last name is an Irish name and we're 0% Irish, as his bio father was likely 100% German. My grandmother was a quiet, Devout Catholic woman as far as I always knew. So it's been wild finding out she had some major secrets. Do him and his siblings look alike? My brother got a test that showed he had 0.2% African DNA. He now calls his black co-worker brother. Yes, I come from a long line of white trash. A friend of my uncle is like this. He's 3% Congolese. He took this as a forever N-word pass. Dude's blonde haired, blue eyed, and acts like a frat boy, even though he's mid 40s. I have one full-blooded Native American ancestor. This did not change my life. What did was that through this I was able to find parts of my birth family and they had family law that they were significantly Native American and sort of looked the part. I ended up telling them that they did have one ancestor, but one ancestor 5 generations back means basically nothing. Furthermore, my grandmother was forced into a marriage at 14 or 15 in some hick town in Idaho by her parents who wanted their friend to have a companion. That friend was in his 30s. She had 3 children popped out before she was 20. In the dark of night she escaped to California and married a new man that she lived the rest of her life with. Their younger son is my father. I was able to get in touch with children of the first marriage and they had an attitude towards my grandmother that was not altogether undeserved. She did abandon them. After I added some context they relaxed their judgments a bit. My heart goes out to your grandmother and it's nice that her first kids didn't resent her as much. They probably didn't know the full story. The child was mine. Third guy tested. 19 years of child support. Was Maury nice in person? I bought my ex-husband and I 23 and kits for Christmas one year. I am part black. That was a shocker. I don't claim it or anything though. I'm Snow White. He was adopted. All he knew from the adoption agency was that his mother was married at the time he was conceived. But her husband was not his father. My husband was the product of an affair. It was really neat when his results came back and he saw profiles of 3rd and 4th cousins. First time in his life he ever saw a picture of his blood relatives. One day he got a new match from someone. It said he was likely her uncle. As it turns out, it was his half-sister. As it turns out, his mother had 4 kids with 4 different baby daddies. He had 2 older siblings and one that is 10 years younger than him. His mother kept his other siblings but for whatever reason, put him up for adoption. Also as it turns out, his mother is crazy as a bedbug. He eventually had to block her from calling because she was nuts. His adoptive family wasn't very good. There was some abuse. But his bio siblings have all told him they think he was the lucky one for having been adopted. I ordered one of the earlier versions of 23andMe back in 2013. Looked through some fun generic traits and ancestral history. Then forgot about it for a few years. Until one day in 2017 when I received an email that a close relative was discovered. The connection listed them as a first cousin. Which was weird because I thought that I had no immediate cousins and no one in my family recognized the name. A few months later, another one was added and finally a third a couple of months after that. Turns out my uncle has multiple illegitimate children and they all took DNA tests around the same time. All 3 of them found out that he was their dad thanks to my initial result connecting them and working together to compare family history. They're older, 30s to 40s, so it's more of a peace of mind at this point in their lives. But I'm glad that they were able to find their real dad through the experience. If you're into podcasts, there's a good one about this topic called Family Secrets. Where can I find it? Both my partner and I tested positive as cystic fibrosis carriers. I don't know the exact chances of this, but it's low. None of our family members have CF. This was after we had our first child, who luckily does not have CF, but has really changed how we feel about any more children. I have a friend who was a carrier and her husband was too. She had 2 children with CF. Her son lived to be 8 and her daughter passed away at 16. Very sad. I guess when they had the second child they were hoping to be that 1 in 4. I found out I came from 2 entirely different people. My parents aren't very similar either. I'm no longer Native American as my family has claimed for so long. Not really life changing but hahaha same here. I was told 75-80% NA. I am only 53%. Rest is white. It turned out that I was 100% that beach. Even when you're crying crazy. The great thing about that Lizzo song is that it completely rejects the colonial idea that DNA matters at all. Ducking, like and subscribe.